like to now introduce the Executive Director and Co-Founder of Avenor College, Diana Segichani.
Ladies and gentlemen, Your Excellency, distinguished guests, dear parents, teachers and students. Welcome to our 4th edition of our conference focused on the question, what's worth learning? I consider that this should lie at every educational endeavor. We are honored to have with us today the British Ambassador to Romania, whose insights will enrich our understanding of this important topic. His Excellency's presence emphasizes the vital role education plays in shaping individuals, communities and nations. It is a great pleasure to see our magic triangle in the room of parents, teachers and students gathered here. This triangle is central to everything we do at Avenor College, and we are proud to be recognized as an outstanding British school overseas by the UK Department for Education. Our success is built on the powerful collaboration between these 3 groups, each playing an essential role in shaping the learning experiences. Today's conference, we also celebrate International Teachers' Day on October 5th. Teachers are at the core of our transformative education. They inspire and challenge students every day, and it is fitting to reflect that what's worth learning is not just for students, but for all of us. This conference continues a tradition of inviting esteemed voices from our community. In previous year, we have had the privilege of hearing from Mircea Miglea, a professor of psychology, Doru Castellan, a philosopher, or Kevin Bartlett, our mentor, a distinguished leading figure in international education. Kevin Bartlett, our mentor from CGC, perfectly captures our common goal. We educate people who are good with ideas, have good skills, and they are good people. At Avenor, we constantly evolve our curriculum by integrating the wisdom of esteemed thinkers. What's worth learning is dynamic, changing as society changes. Our commitment to transformative education is, and it always be at the core of what we do. This year, we look forward to the Ambassador's broader global perspective on education. Before we listen to your talk and your speech, I would like to present to you a little gift from our community. Just Sing Choir will sing a song. He asked me about the instrument and I told him that it's going to be a surprise. The choir began 3 years ago, like a very small group of young students, united by their shared passion for singing and expressions emotions through music. Together with their conductor, Ioana Gafencu, they have had a rewarding journey performing at events such as Black Sea School Virtual Choir, a COBIS project, Inter-School Talent Show, and other various Avenor events. Last June, under Ioana's leadership, the choir entered their first international competition, the Musica Orbis Prague Festival, returning proudly with a bronze medal. A standout performance is the Romanian song by Irina Rimesh, in which Ioana, their conductor, creatively blends the students' voices with unconventional percussion and sematron, we call it toacă, adding a unique touch that honors Romanian traditions. So welcome, Ambassador, and I would like to welcome on stage our Just Sing Choir.
choir. What a fantastic performance. You should be very, very proud. Music is, of course, one of the performing arts, along with drama and dance. Are the performing arts worth learning in 2024? That performance would certainly suggest yes. I would like to also take this opportunity to thank all the teachers involved in such a beautiful performance. Thank you very much, teachers. As Diana stated, the theme of today's conference is what's worth learning, a subject of great importance not only for our school, but for the broader community. In a rapidly changing world, education is the cornerstone of our future. Today we gather to reflect on what's worth learning, exchange ideas, and consider the pathways that will lead us towards growth and development. With us today, we are privileged to have His Excellency, who will share his insights on what's worth learning in today's world. As an esteemed representative of the United Kingdom, his perspective on education and global collaboration will no doubt inspire and enrich our discussions today. Avenor College is an outstanding way to school, but we want to continually evolve. We want to keep asking questions. We want to be better still. As an outstanding school, we became preoccupied with being a forward-thinking school, a school that prepares even our youngest students for the future. This requires being able to stay ahead of the curve and horizon scan. We're very fortunate today to have a leading and influential voice to give his perspective on what's worth learning. Having received a scholarship, he read classics and English at Lady Margaret Hall, Oxford University. His career in the UK's Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Office has seen him in various significant positions, including Director for Europe and Director for EU Exit. In his current role in Romania, he has shown a strong interest in fostering collaboration between the UK and Romania. I'm honoured to have the privilege to introduce His Excellency Giles Matthew Portman, British Ambassador to Romania.
Thank you so much. It's lovely to be here. Well, I do feel that I'm making a bit of a habit of coming second after someone who's done a better performance than I have. So a couple of weeks ago I was invited to give a motivational speech on the subject of ambition and inspiration, 3 minutes long. And they put me on straight after David Popovic. As you know, just won Olympic gold, and I thought, what can I add to what David Popovic has to say? And today you've put me on just after the choir who performed so brilliantly. So I think I have to change the timetables and come on before the start performance in the future. But thank you so much for inviting me for my first visit to Avenor College, and what a wonderful school it is, among many fantastic British educational schools in Bucharest and indeed throughout the whole of Romania. And as we're on the subject of what's worth learning, I think that's one of the first things I've learnt about Romania, is how vibrant and successful the English curriculum and English language educational sector is here in Romania. And in fact, I'm told that in terms of the intensity of British accredited schools, there are more in Romania than any other country in the world, which is amazing. And just by the numbers, I think Romania is number 3 in the world for British accredited schools, and it's number 2 in Europe, just after Spain, I think. So that's amazing, and something that I didn't know before I came here. It's a really important part of our bilateral relationship between the UK and Romania, and something that I'm really excited by and pleased to give all support to, which is why it's great to be here today. And it doesn't just stop at schools either, because we're trying to forge a closer relationship between universities between the UK and Romania as well. So just a couple of days ago I was at the Romanian American University, which some of you may know, to launch their new academic year. And why was I at the Romanian American university because they now have a link up with the University of York in England. So you can study at the Romanian American University in Bucharest, and you can get 2 degrees, one from there and one from the University of York in England. And that's something that we're trying to do more of. We've got about 10 active partnerships already between British and Romanian universities. We had an event to bring together about 40 universities in February, and we're doing another one in Cluj at the end of this month. So I really want to see that relationship between British and Romanian universities grow as well. And of course we have the British Council present here in Romania, teaching lots of Romanians in English. And in fact, we expanded the British Council at the end of last year. It's the biggest expansion in Europe here in Romania. So whether it's schools, universities, English language teaching of adults, Romania is leading the way in Europe and one of the leading countries in the world, one of the most important partners of the UK in the world. So you've given me an enormously broad subject to talk about, and I'm going to try and say something that might be interesting to students, something that might be interesting to parents, something that might be interesting to teachers. And I thought I'd start off with my learning about Romania. It didn't start when I came here 10 months ago. Actually, I tried to come to Romania so long ago. I was almost your age. I first tried to come to Romania in 1990. I was a first-year student, and you can do this thing, I think you can still do it, interrailing, where you buy a ticket and you get a month of unlimited rail travel. So I set off from Oxford with 10 friends, 1 month to travel, and £500 to cover the entire journey and all my accommodation, food and transport for a month. And the plan was to see as much of Central and Eastern Europe as we could. So we went to Berlin. We walked through the Berlin Wall because it was still there. There were just a few holes in it. We visited East Germany, a country that doesn't exist anymore. We visited Czechoslovakia, another country that doesn't exist anymore. We went through Hungary, and we were trying to get to Romania, and I was running out of time, I was running out of money, and unfortunately I was running out of friends as well, because it's quite stressful to travel in that way. And we basically got to the border of Romania, and I'd run out of all 3, and I had to go home. But I said to myself then, I must go back to see Romania since the fall of communism and the transfer to democracy. I had no idea how. But actually, what, 14 years later, I was a diplomat, and I was the British negotiator for Romania's accession to the European Union. So that brought me back to Bucharest and Brasov, visiting as a diplomat. And then I came back end of last year, and I suppose in terms of what I've learned, the first thing is how much Romania has changed since 2004 when I was last here. So back then, it was just about to join NATO, finding some challenges in joining the EU, and now you see Romania as one of our closest allies in NATO, one of the most important countries in the EU, an absolute linchpin in defending the southeast flank of Europe, building the biggest military base in Europe here in Romania, a country that's getting wealthier and wealthier. I've read, you can tell me if it's right, that the GDP per capita of Bucharest is higher than Budapest, Madrid and Berlin, I hope. Can that be right? And the other massive change, of course, is the people-to-people contact. So there are now 1.2, 1.3 million Romanians living in the UK. Romanian is the most spoken foreign language in Great Britain. And it's the 3rd most spoken language in British homes. So the first is English, the 3rd is Romanian. Anyone know what the 2nd is?
Polish.
No, it's Welsh. So there you go. So amazing. After English and Welsh, the most spoken language in British homes is Romanian. So those are some of the things I've learned, but I've also learned how much British people still need to learn about Romania. Actually, we don't know so much. I think King Charles III is one of the biggest advocates of Romania. He's visited nearly every year for 25 years. And I'm really noticing that more and more people in Britain are talking about Romania. You're seeing it in the news, in travel supplements, in the newspapers, on television more and more. And I feel that we're on the cusp of really British people en masse discovering Romania and wanting to come here and visit your beautiful country. And I think it's high time. It's the sort of undiscovered, best-kept secret in Europe for British people. And the other thing that I've discovered is, of course, your language. Because I learned Latin at school, and I learned Latin at university. That was my degree. I learned Latin for 10 years. And I was aware that there was this country at the far end of Europe from the UK, which had a language based on Latin. And of course I read Ovid at university, who wrote his Epistulae ex Ponto, his stories, his letters from the Black Sea, when he was sent away from Rome to live in what's now Constanza. And so one of the reasons I wanted to come back here was actually to learn your language and discover this language which was based on Latin. And as I discovered, not quite as based on Latin as I'd hoped, and a bit harder than I had assumed, more based on Slavic, Turkish even, but such a fascinating language to learn. So that takes me on a bit to sort of what you learn as a diplomat. And I think one of the first and most important things that diplomats learn is the language of the country they go to. And that's still, I'm really pleased to say, one of the things that all British ambassadors try to do. And I think it's vital to understanding the country, but it's also a really important signal of respect for the country that you live in. So I'm trying my best to learn Romanian as a way to understand the culture of your country, as a way to understand the customs and the cultural sensitivities of the country you live in as well. But I think probably the thing you learn most of all as a diplomat is adaptability. So you heard a little bit about my CV, but my first job was in New York. I worked in the UN Security Council in New York, so that's a multilateral organization. Then I moved to Prague, where I worked in a much smaller bilateral embassy. Then I moved to Brussels, and I worked in the European Union. And I went to Ankara in Turkey, and I was the deputy ambassador in Ankara. And then I was about to move to Washington. And literally 2 days before my flight, I left the foreign ministry, and I went to work for the European Union, which seemed a good idea at the time. But things changed. But I worked for 8 years in the European institutions, and then Brexit came, and I had to leave. And I came back, and I became a Brexit negotiator, literally sitting across the table from people who'd been my colleagues the week before, and having to negotiate a Brexit deal with them. So you learn nothing more than the need to be adaptable as a diplomat. And also, I think, adaptable to different politicians and different governments. So you might have to work for a left-wing government one day, a right-wing government the next day. You might have to work for different ministers who have different characteristics and priorities and different personalities, some of whom you will get on well with, some of whom you'll get on less well. So the most important trait and feature for a diplomat is actually, I think, adaptability. But I wanted to say a little bit also primarily to students here about kind of my journey through school and university and what I think is useful from that period in terms of my career. And the first thing I have to say to you is that I had no intention of being a diplomat. That wasn't my plan at all. I was convinced for years that I was going to be an architect. And I love architecture and drawing and design. My father was an architect. I was obsessed with designing things. And I changed my mind. And then I decided to study classics at university instead. And I left university and I had no idea what I wanted to do. so I went to live in Spain for a year with one suitcase and a one-way ticket. And I taught English in Spain for a year, and I learnt the language, and I realized I liked living in an international environment, learning about another country, being surrounded by different people. And then I eventually joined the foreign ministry and became a diplomat. So I think my first recommendation to you is don't worry about it. If you know what you want to do, if you know you want to be a doctor or a lawyer, then you're very lucky, and some people do know that. But I think most people don't know what they want to do, and it's all right. It will work its way out. And as someone once said to me, your career is what happens to you while you sit there worrying about your career. It will be all right. My second piece of advice is absolutely do what you enjoy, not what you think you should do. So that's what I did. So my A-levels, I was at a very academic school where they didn't think that people should really do art, but I loved art. And I said I wanted to do art A-level, and they said, no, you have to do German A-level, and I refused. And I said, I'm doing art A-level, and I did. And although it didn't lead it to a career, it's something that is very much part of me, and something that makes who I am, and is part of my overall interests. And then, as I said, I did classics and English at university, so while my friends were studying maths and economics, and perhaps found it more obvious to go into a career in finance or something, it was a bit less straightforward for me. But I spent 3 years living in one of the most beautiful cities in the world, reading the best books of the last 2,000 years. So I mean, what nicer way to spend 3 years? So that's my second piece of advice. Do what you enjoy doing, because that's what you'll be best at. My third advice is learn public speaking, as I'm appreciating. Because I think in any kind of job, the ability to stand in front of an audience and speak publicly is just so important. It wasn't something that I learned at school at all, or at university. My kids have done Lambda, my daughter's doing MUN now. These things are really, really good. And the sooner you learn how to speak publicly and the more you practice, the better. But I have to say, having met lots of you on the way in, I don't think any of you have a problem with public speaking. So congratulations. And then my last piece of advice is always remember your EQ as well as your IQ. So yes, you have to show you're intelligent, you have to get good results in your exams, but your EQ, your emotional intelligence, is incredibly important to employers as well. And that ability to show that you can engage with people who are different from you, and with people with different experiences and from different backgrounds. And again, some of the things that schools offer, like the Duke of Edinburgh Award Scheme, I think are great for that. We didn't have it when I was at school, but I did volunteering for 3 years at school. I did my first year teaching in a primary school, once a week. My second year working in a charity bookshop. And my third year, actually the most demanding, working in a cancer hospital every Wednesday afternoon for a year. And I have incredibly vivid memories of some of the people I met who were going through some very, very difficult experiences, but that helped contribute to who I am and gave me, I think, that ability to see things from other people's perspective. And I think that's really important when you come to your careers as well. So look, as I said, I came here last October, and coming up then to the first year in Romania, I've learned so much about the country, the language, the culture, but I've learned there's so much to discover as well. And then I think what I need to begin to think about now is learning almost what my legacy will be. What can I realistically achieve in my time in Romania? What do I want people to sort of say changed for the better between our two countries after my time here? So I suppose that means that learning never stops at school, doesn't stop at university, doesn't really stop with jobs either. It's a lifelong thing, and that's something to be aware of, but I think a really positive thing, and something to be happy about and motivated about as well. So look, thank you. Those are some random thoughts. Thank you so much for inviting me again. What do I do now? Do I sit here? So I will sit here, and if you want to ask me any questions or anything, I'd be more than happy to expand. But again, thanks for your time today, and very good luck to everyone for the new school year. Thank you.
I remember being the age of these students here, trying to think, well, what will I do when I'm older? And I always heard that people who worked in banking made lots of money. Thought, well, that's obviously what I have to do. Go into banking, I'll make lots of money, I'll be rich. But it wasn't for me. I didn't enjoy it. Many years of regretting that decision until I eventually found my true calling in life in education, and it's been fantastic ever since. Learn public speaking, again, great advice. From my own personal journey, I still find this difficult. Practice makes perfect. I'm getting better and better at public speaking the more I do it, but I'm still on the journey. I'm not certainly public speaking with yourself. I'm very impressed. And emotional intelligence, I also agree. You will meet lots of other people on your journey who've got fantastic qualifications, great skills and talents. Sometimes the emotional intelligence is what sets you apart. So it's very, very important to focus on that, keep that in mind. So thank you again. And audience, please, if you have a question, if you raise your hand, and we will bring you a microphone.
Thank you. I really loved your speech, and for example, I have thoughts about becoming a diplomat, so it was a very inspiring speech for me. If you were to go back in time when you were a student, what piece of advice would you give yourself?
Is that working? Yes. First of all, I should say, by the way, my English teacher at school, who was very inspirational, had been in a career in finance before. So he'd worked in the City of London and decided it wasn't for him, and then became an English teacher. And then a few years later, he left and became a priest. So this may be your next career move. You never know what's around the corner. What would be my advice to me as a student at university or at school?
In school.
Really, honestly, to do a bit more of some of the things I was telling you to do. I was not fantastically good at doing those extracurricular things. I was a little bit lazy, and I did very well academically, and then I kind of wanted to either see my friends or go home. I didn't really do a lot of those extra things, and I think especially at schools now, you have so many opportunities through lunchtime or after school or weekend activities. Things like Duke of Edinburgh or other clubs and societies or sporting opportunities. I really would say, and I feel a bit hypocritical because I didn't do it, but I really would say, it's a bit of a cliche, but the more you put in, the more you get out, and I really would, if I had my time again, put in a bit more to those wider activities beyond just the academic.
Good question, thank you. Good advice. Who else would like to ask a question? A teacher, a parent?
Your Excellency, I was wondering from a human perspective, could you share with us one of your failures? Because we are delighted by your presence and your expertise and your wisdom, but also I think for students as well as for teachers and parents, it's important to reflect on the lessons learned in life and the learning curve. You know, the learning curve gets bigger when you are confronted with adversity. So sharing a personal life lesson would be meaningful to us. Thank you.
Yes, I mean, great question. I think one of the challenges in going up the career ladder is that you get further away from some of the detail. And this can be a real challenge when you're dealing with politicians, because politicians tend to only want to talk to the very senior officials, but actually some of the detail is held at a lower level. And I suppose, I mean, in my last job, I definitely, I worked for 3 different foreign ministers, and let's say that one of them was not a successful relationship. I won't go further than that. And I was doing a negotiation to do with Brexit, and it wasn't going very well. And I think our relationship suffered as a result. And I think part of the reason was that I wasn't in the minutiae of the detail. And I think if I went back and sort of thought about that again, my piece of advice to you would be, if you're kind of realizing you're not quite in the right place, it's all right to say so, and it's all right to ask for help. And it's all right to be honest about what you don't know. And it's much worse to try and cover all these things up and blag your way through, because the result would be worse. So I think sometimes it's a strength to say, I don't know, and be honest and open and look for help. And that's probably a mistake I made in this particular instance and would do differently.
Thank you, Johan. Excellent questions. And I concur, it's always okay to ask for help. And we learn from our mistakes, ultimately. Who else has a question?
Thank you. So I thought of another question. Seeing as technology advances a lot these days, and in modern times we have more subjects coming up, like I believe my parents didn't learn about business or global perspectives. What do you deem as subjects that will not change over the years? Like, what is important even with the technological advancements?
Wow, yeah. So, I mean, same with me. Computing was introduced when I was at school, but it was probably not as you know it today. And I didn't understand it anyway. But a lot, I mean, if you take my profession, when I joined the office, about 20% of us did what I did at university, Latin. If you went back a generation, more than 50% of British diplomats studied Latin, and now none of them, right? But I don't think that means that Latin's obsolete, because actually what I learned through studying classical languages is, first of all, this interest in a different world. Secondly, the intellectual ability to, it's kind of like coding, right? You're just doing it in a different language rather than with numbers. And thirdly, that ability to sort of analyze information and produce your own opinions upon it. So I don't think that these subjects are irrelevant now. And subjects like history, which is by definition studying old stuff, I think teaches you such amazing skills that I think it will always be useful. So I think one of the things that's changed in Britain over the last 20 years is how many more children are studying science. So 20 years ago, everyone was worried that science was too difficult and British students weren't studying science. Now they're all studying science, and they're not studying foreign languages. And maybe they think you can do everything through Google Translate, but you miss out on the cultural connection and the enjoyment. So I suppose what I'm saying is, you will see some changes, and of course some different subjects introduced, but I don't think any of the old languages, old subjects should be considered obsolete, because it's not just about the subject, it's about the skills it teaches you, and that's why I go back to my point that it's best to do something that you enjoy, because you might think it doesn't automatically lead to something, but it will teach you skills that will be relevant, and if you enjoy it, you're more likely to be good at it.
Thank you.
It's a very interesting question, and I'm also from a similar era. When I was at school, English, maths and science were the core subjects, and IT, information technology, was just starting to come through, and it was being debated, should it be a core subject or not? And now we see where we are in the world now, it's moved on a lot.
Thank you. I am focused a lot on the more psychological, or let's say emotional part of us humans. So I wanted to ask if you had to choose between going back in time and maybe making different choices, or staying exactly in the present and continuing with how you are, believing it was all a learning process, or that everything that happened to you was meant to be happening to you, what would you choose?
Well, obviously the answer I should give you is it was all a learning process, and every experience is positive. But the real answer is, of course, I'd love to be able to time travel back in time. Yeah, but then you've seen Back to the Future probably, haven't you? It gets very complicated, has some very unexpected implications. So yeah, probably you should not travel back in time, and you should just treat every experience as a learning experience, and don't dwell on it. And that's one thing I do think, because we all have bad days, right? And sometimes people say something that I think is really mean, or misunderstood me, or misrepresented me, and I can go home and brood about it a bit. And then I always try to tell myself, they're not suffering, right? They're not thinking about me right now. So it's much better, if you can, to try and discipline yourself to sort of think of everything, good days and bad days, as a learning experience, and treat it positively.
Thank you.
Great question. And Back to the Future, all three movies are fantastic. I'm sure you agree.
You probably don't know what I'm talking about, do you? The 1980s.
The ambassador has kindly joined us today, and it's fantastic to have him with us, but he has an engagement also after this, so we've got time for one more question, and then we've got a surprise presentation for you. So one more question, please, from the audience.
Hello, my name is Mihala Mazilu. I'm a mother of 3. I'm very happy to be here and to have the chance to ask you about, you said in your speech that we are number 2 or number 3 in Europe as number of British schools in overseas. This is probably the fact that we as parents are, we want what's best for our kids in terms of education. Looking in the future, my question is if you know that in the next future, the UK government to have special programs or to facilitate the access to Romanian students in the UK universities. And when I'm saying access, I'm referring to the tuition fees and you know, the story. Thank you.
Yes, thank you for that. Well, as I said, I was a Brexit negotiator, so I sort of, I know exactly what you're talking about. Let me say a couple of things on that. First of all, when I was speaking about university connections, that's partly a response to this challenge. So what we're trying to do is create many more opportunities for Romanian students to get a British qualification without necessarily even needing to go to Britain. So I think that's really important, but I appreciate that lots of people want to go and study in the UK. So I think I'd say 2 things on that. First of all, I think there are still many more scholarships available to Romanian students than people realise. There are about 200 universities in the UK that are offering scholarship schemes. None of them are just for Romanians, but they're eligible for Romanians. So I think partly it's about making people aware of the opportunities that are still out there. I had a small drink at my house a couple of weeks ago for alumni of my college at Oxford, and I thought, has anyone in Bucharest been to Lady Margaret Hall in Oxford? like 25 people, including several who are there now. So I was really amazed by that. And then the other thing I would say, without sort of making any promises or predictions, is that we have a new government in the UK that has made a very clear signal about wanting to reset the relationship with Europe and to re-engage with Europe and to have not a renegotiation of Brexit, but to look at whether we can show more flexibility around the terms of the Brexit deal. And I think that question of youth mobility will be one of the major asks of the European side, and we'll have to see how that pans out. But that would be my suggestion. Look at the opportunities for current university partnerships, look at the opportunities for scholarships that are already there because there are many, and let's see how the next couple of years pan out with the negotiations between London and Brussels.
Well, I think that was a very engaging and wide-ranging conversation on what's worth learning, and leaves us with plenty to think about. Thank you, audience, and thank you, Mr. Ambassador. I would now invite you to take a seat and enjoy a surprise performance from the Avenor Parents Choir.
Thank you very much, Parents Choir. Thank you, Ambassador. I know that you need to leave shortly, so please let's applaud him again around the applause. Thank you very much. A big round of for Jonathan too, our conductor, and for the audience